Welcome back, everybody, to this Kansas City Chiefs live stream presented by Bleacher Report. I'm your host, Michael Darcy, and I'm joined by my co-host, Joey Segura. And over the course of the next 15 to 20 minutes, we are going to break down and discuss if the Kansas City Chiefs are planning on trading up in this year's NFL draft. They hold the last pick in the first round, pick 32, because they are the back-to-back Super Bowl champions. And while there are going to be some pretty good players available at 32, in order to get a guy that could be a cornerstone of your franchise, you might have to give up some future draft capital to trade up to go get somebody. And Joey, I'm sure that most people saw the title of this live stream, and really the biggest need for the Chiefs is a wide receiver. And immediately the names that come to mind are the Malik Neighbors and the Marvin Harrison Jr.'s. While those guys would be awesome to have in a Chiefs uniform, they're going within the top 12. So we're going to have to look at other wide receivers that are going to be available, towards the mid to end of the first round that the Chiefs might be able to trade up to go get. But Joey, my first question for you is, what do you think the odds are that the Chiefs do trade up for a wide receiver in this draft?
I'm honestly not sure. I think it could go either way. We know last year Brett Veach tried to trade up, and it came down to simply that nobody would make a trade with the Kansas City Chiefs because we're the Chiefs. So when that whole run of receivers went in the late teens, early 20s last year, Veach tried hard to move up, to get up there, and nobody wanted a deal. And you and I were talking about it. You can look at this draft order. I think an NFC team wouldn't have any issue really trading with us. I don't think they care because, that's not what their worry is. But when you look at the teams ahead of us, Baltimore's at pick 30, Buffalo's at 28. So you would have to move up past 28 to get there. So 27, where Arizona's slotted at, I think that could be a realistic spot to move up. If there's a guy like, say, for example, you really want a Donnie or you really want Xavier Worthy and they're still there and you don't want to take the risk of losing them, I think you can move up there. Overall, I kind of don't think the Chiefs are going to trade up just because I think it's going to be so hard to find a team that's willing to do it and also at a value that would make sense for Kansas City.
The problem is when you are a back-to-back Super Bowl champion and when you have won the AFC, year in, year out for the past 5 seasons, it makes it difficult to trade within your conference. So there are a lot of AFC teams that have picks towards the beginning of the draft and then obviously towards the end of the draft, like Buffalo and Cincinnati, that aren't going to want to give the Chiefs more fuel to beat them in the upcoming season. So it's going to probably have to be an NFC team if they do decide to make a trade. And even then, you have to think about it this way. The Chiefs have won the Super Bowl back-to-back years against an NFC opponent. So even the NFC is concerned about the Chiefs getting more star power that's going to beat them in a potential Super Bowl. Now, the Cardinals aren't a team that I think are going to push for the Super Bowl in 2024, so they might be a good target. But still, NFC teams aren't trying to give the Chiefs, especially Patrick Mahomes, another weapon on offense. And that's why trading up for a wide receiver might be pretty difficult because everybody knows, with the offseason the Chiefs had, signing Hollywood Brown and cutting MVS, that a potential move for a wide receiver is on the horizon. And the draft is really the only way to fill that need. And so there's a high likelihood that the Chiefs do take a wide receiver in, round 1 or even round 2 or maybe both days. But I do want to talk about something that I saw on NFL.com. Chad Rutter said that the Chiefs could potentially trade up to number 17 with the Jacksonville Jaguars to take wide receiver Xavier Worthy. I think that is insane because the Jacksonville Jaguars are an AFC team that is trying to compete, trying to get to the Super Bowl, and they're not going to give up pick number 17 for the Chiefs to trade up to get a wide receiver. And also, I don't know if you agree with this or not, Xavier Worthy is not a top 20 pick in the NFL draft. He should not go 17. So I think this would be a horrible decision. And this is his mock draft. And mock drafts, unless it comes from Mel Kiper or even a few other people, they're not very reliable. And so I don't think there's a very good shot that they do this. But what are your thoughts?
I don't think so at all. I know Veach has had a history of falling in love with a speedy wide receiver. I think that's been a pattern. We can look at Mecole Hardman. I think that's a perfect example right there. When there were other receivers at the time that DK Metcalf. At the time, it was kind of weird that they didn't take DK over Mecole, and still to this day, it looks weird. But hey, Mecole scored the game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl for us, so I'm cool with it. I don't think you get Xavier Worthy that high. I just think it would be a mistake. I think he's going to fall. And honestly, if a team wants to take Xavier Worthy in the top 20 simply because of the speed, so be it. I think he's going to be a good receiver. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to hate on the kid. I think he's a good wide receiver, but I think taking him top 20 is a mistake. I think Mitchell's the better wide receiver, and I think Mitchell's going to be available in the later 20s where you can make a realistic move up where it's only going to probably cost you maybe a fourth on top of your first rounder, something like that, and you can get a receiver that, in my opinion, is better than Xavier Worthy.
I think Worthy is the flashy name. He gets a lot of comps to John Ross, the guy that broke the 40-yard dash time, and then Worthy just broke it again. So by that, they're similar. I don't know if they're a similar wide receiver. I mean, Ross was a top 10 pick, and Worthy's not a top 10 pick. But at the same time, I don't think the Chiefs should go this route. I think it'd be a mistake. And don't fall victim to the speed trap. He's fast. I get it. But his body, I mean, he's like 170, or I can't even remember what he weighed at the combine, but it was like in the 160s, 170s, and that is not a sustainable weight in the NFL. If you want to beat press man coverage, if you want to fight for a jump ball, like that's not ideal for the Chiefs. And so I don't think that Brett Veach is going to make that same mistake. And so that's why the decision to trade up to get Xavier Worthy at 17, trading up with Jacksonville of all teams, I think that's highly unrealistic. And the best chance of the Chiefs trading up is them moving up a few spots, because with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, they want to keep as many draft assets in this draft class as possible. They're a few pieces away from going back to the Super Bowl. And so they don't want to give up a second and a third or next year's third to trade up 10, 15 spots to get a player that, if it's Xavier Worthy, they definitely, overshot that. And he's just not a top 20 pick. So I think that would be foolish. But Mitchell's a really good receiver that I think is going to be there towards the end of the first round. Ladd McConkey from Georgia is a really popular name that's been thrown around. But I think we can both agree that a wide receiver is pretty much a must for the Chiefs in round one.
I think so. And we discussed it. I'm not going to make a comment about the Rashee Rice situation, but we're all aware of it. And I do think he'll be on the roster. I really believe that. And I think most people do as well. But I think you do need to prepare for other alternatives as well. And so I think you need to go out and you need to get a wide receiver in round one, because you have an opportunity here. This defense, now that you got Mike Dana back, it gives the team and the D-line specifically some time to let Felix develop a little bit more and let Omenihu not have to rush back from his injury. So we're in a lucky position where, to me, that there's not a huge singular position of need right now. Obviously, I want to draft a wide receiver so we have someone to go with Rashee Rice for the next few years, especially as Kelce gets older. But right now, this upcoming season, you're going to have Rashee Rice. You're going to have Travis Kelce. You're going to have Hollywood Brown. You're going to have the decent tight end room that you have with Fortson, Noah Gray, those guys. That's still going to be there. So I think getting a wide receiver round one, and I keep seeing people in the chat talking about Leggett. I think that'd be a good pick too. He's a hell of a returner as well. So you can kind of duel on that. But yeah, I think you have to go a wide receiver round one. I'm not convinced they're going to trade up though, but I would not be shocked at all.
I don't know if they're going to trade up just because I don't know if the value's there. I think if they could get a Marvin Harrison Jr. or a Malik Neighbors, it would make sense to trade up, 10, 15 spots, but they're not doing that to take a speedster that has bust written all over him. And especially when you're the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, the Chiefs have only traded up so many times, with Andy Reid. And after Patrick Mahomes got drafted, I can't really think of a time that they made a substantial move to trade up. I mean, they don't do that in the first round. If anything, I think there's a better chance that they trade back. I still don't think that's going to happen. I think they want a first-round pick. But I don't even hate, and this is just an idea, I wouldn't even hate with the current state of this Chiefs wide receiver room if the Chiefs drafted a wide receiver in round one and then turned around the next day and drafted another one.
I wouldn't either. I mean, I don't know. I think you need to just go out and get one. I think if you can find a wide receiver in the later rounds that you like in terms of value, Sure, go for it. But I just think I'd rather address other areas of depth. I think we need another cornerback. I think you can get another edge rusher to help relieve some of that pressure there. And I think getting another linebacker wouldn't hurt either. I know we've been linked to some tight ends in the later rounds. The K-State tight end, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm going to probably butcher his last name, Ben Sanat, I think, is how you say his name. I'm a KU fan, so I'm not sure how to say his name. Yeah, but he's been good all year. I've seen some of his clips. So that's another guy Andy Reid would love to get in the 4th round or 3rd round, someone like that. And correct, Fortson is in Miami. That's my fault. A little brain fart there.
I think it is also worth talking about because one of the comments says, who is going to trade with us? That is a great point. You know, we talked about it earlier. The recent news that has come out of the NFL is that Stephon Diggs, who just got traded to the Houston Texans, was allowed to seek a trade partner with every team but the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think it is just so crazy. I mean, it's not really crazy to say, but the Chiefs are so dominant. They are so good. They've had such a stranglehold on this conference and this league for the past 5 seasons that other AFC teams that are fighting against the Chiefs, their worst fear is their best player going to the Chiefs. And that's why Diggs was allowed to seek a trade partner with anybody but the Chiefs. And it's just going to make it so much more difficult for the Chiefs to trade for talent because nobody in the AFC is going to send their best player or a player that has any value to this team because they know the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes are going to take that player and make him just that much better. And so it's really going to be difficult in the draft to trade up with an AFC team. And like I said, Buffalo, Cincinnati, Houston, those teams are all off the table. They're not going to trade with the Chiefs. And so you're going to have to trade with an NFC team that might not want to give up their pick so that you can get a wide receiver to beat them in a potential Super Bowl. So it's going to be very difficult for the Chiefs. And it's why this draft is so important because in all likelihood, the Chiefs are going to stay at where they are at with the pick-wise at 32 in the 1st round. You have got to nail that pick. And Brett Veach has done some great drafting in the 1st round. You got Trent McDuffie, you got George Karlaftis, but you also have guys like Clyde Edwards-Helaire who did not really, pan in the NFL. And so it's important that you nail that pick. And that's why I think that, it's crucial that since teams are not going to trade with the Chiefs, they're going to have to make their draft picks count.
Absolutely. And I think especially when you're in a contending state too, you really need to hit on the draft picks because the cap becomes an issue. Now you can make things work, but you got to let guys like a L'Jarius Sneed go. And that's going to be a tough reality of the success that we're going to have is we're going to have to say goodbye to a lot of fan favorites. Like Pacheco might not be here in a few years. Same with Karlaftis. One of Karlaftis and McDuffie. You're probably going to have a similar Chris Jones Sneed situation when you're going to have to pick between the two of them. So you got to make these picks count. So you got to be able to hit on these picks. And when you go through the other positions of need, I know somebody in the chat was talking about a left tackle, and I agree. I think left tackle definitely right now, but I really am kind of convinced Donovan Smith is going to re-sign here. I think that the cap room that we created with the Sneed deal is going to allow that, and I can't really imagine a scenario where Brett Veach wants to roll into the first week where a left tackle is protecting Mahomes, unless that left tackle is like a top 10 pick kind of guy, So I think a tackle is definitely going to get drafted. I do think they're going to draft one at some point. I'm convinced about that. I just don't think it's going to be round 1 either.
I don't think they draft a tackle in round 1. And I'll go as far to say that if they draft a tackle in round 1, I'd be a little bit upset just because I don't think that is the biggest need. You have Wanya Morris. You could get somebody on the second day of the draft in round 2 or 3 that could be just as good. I mean, outside of, the top tackles in the draft, there's not a whole lot that really sticks out to me that, are going to be there. Towards the end of the first, might as well just wait to the second or the third and get somebody that could be a developmental project. And you could have a couple developmental players in Wanya Morris and then whatever player you draft. But I'm confident that they'll figure it out. I think that going forward, your biggest needs right now are wide receiver. I think you need to draft a cornerback. Yep. I think tackle is a must at some point. And honestly, I've been flirting with this idea recently. I think the Chiefs might need to pick up a running back and pick up a running back sooner than most people think, not in the 3rd or, 2nd rounds, but I would be very happy with a 5th round running back.
I would too. I think having a running back in the later rounds would be nice. I also think in the position we're at, I think they might want a more veteran running back, to be honest, but I wouldn't hate it either way. My opinion on NFL running backs, it might be an unpopular one. I think they're a dime a dozen. I think the truly great ones are extremely hard to find. Don't get me wrong, like the CMCs, Prime Saquon, guys like that, that doesn't come around. But if you have a good line and a good scheme, you can find an effective running back really with most athletes. So I wouldn't hate it at all. I think it would add I think it would add to the kind of group that we have. I think that Clyde, maybe, I don't know how many downs he's going to play. I still feel like he was an overall negative last year. So, I think I'd like another running back. I know J.K. Dobbins was in for a visit. I don't think we've heard anything about that, though, recently. I don't know.
J.K. Dobbins is not coming to Kansas City. They re-signed Clyde like right after Dobbins left. And my problem with Dobbins is going to play 3 games before getting hurt, and then you're on the hook for the contract that you gave him. And it's just, in my opinion, kind of a waste of a roster spot. I don't think that, he's going to be there for a full 17-game season. And in the NFL, the best ability is the availability. And Dobbins hasn't shown that he could stay healthy his entire career. So what makes you think it's going to start now? So I don't love Clyde being the backup running back to Pacheco. So that's why I do think that you address running back in the later rounds. But I think the biggest needs right now are wide receiver, tackle, and you could debate whether it's defensive end or corner. Right now, Omenahu's going to be out for a while because of the ACL injury, and you could potentially draft somebody to kind of fill the gap on that. You re-sign Mike Dana. You could definitely get some more help for him. And, this comment's talking about Felix. Felix had a play in the Super Bowl that left a lot of Chiefs fans pretty excited about what was to come this season. He was not a healthy scratch. He played in that game. So I do think that maybe we see something from Felix in 2024. I don't like to bank on that. I would love some more insurance. And I definitely think that they can make the defensive tackle room better. So I definitely think that right now the 3 biggest needs are wide receiver, tackle, and cornerback or defensive tackle.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that defensive tackle, when we say it's a need, like, let's make it clear here. We're back-to-back Super Bowl champions. Yeah. This team doesn't have any really glaring holes outside of, it would be nice to have another wide receiver too. It would, wide receiver 3, really, I guess is what I should say for coming years. So it's really about adding depth or trying to improve on what you have. The D tackle room outside of Chris Jones, we can be brutally honest, as much as I like some of them, it's not very great.
It sucks.
It's not good. Yeah. So you can always add more D tackle depth there. I think that that's something that you can always improve on. And in terms of the cornerback room too, I think Shamari Connor is going to move to the cornerback room. So, I think that's a move that people should be expecting a little bit too. That would be an interesting one. But it is about, I can't stress that enough. It is just about improving on what you have. Like, really, we're back-to-back champs. There's not a ton you can crazy improve on. So it's really just saying, okay, you know what? Maybe the D tackle depth's not great. Let's go get another one. The running back depth, like you said, it's not amazing. Let's go out and try to get another one. So I think there's a couple positions of need. I think, like I said, it's all luxury, though. I think that's what's amazing about this team is we're not going into this draft. You need a left tackle, but I think Donovan Smith's coming back. So I think you're going into this draft and looking to just kind of bolster what you have, get some depth. That way, if guys get banged up throughout the year, which is going to happen, this is football, you have guys to come in and replace them in the season.
The only thing that concerns me is the Chiefs sort of did this 2020 when they were going to run it back, and they ended up losing that Super Bowl to the Bucs. They had some injuries not go their way, and I understand that that's just part of football, but the Chiefs seem to think that the guys that they have are good enough to win a Super Bowl. And hey, they've won the last 2, so obviously they do. But I think that there are some Chiefs fans, and I'm kind of in the middle, that believe the Chiefs could have done a better job this offseason of making positional upgrades at some of the weaker position groups on this team, like a defensive tackle or bringing in a cornerback or definitely a veteran wide receiver. And so that's why I think, there's some Chiefs fans out there that are a little bit concerned with the current state of this team because, they've won 2 Super Bowls back-to-back, but you had a chance to improve at those position groups, and you just passed up on that. And that's frustrating because the Chiefs are trying to three-peat. They're trying to be the first team in NFL history to win 3 Super Bowls in a row. That's not an easy feat. Nobody's done it before. And in order to do that, you might have to upgrade every year and get better. And the Chiefs didn't really get better at any positions this offseason. Maybe you could say wide receiver with Hollywood Brown, but even then they got to draft somebody else. And so I think that right now they're a lot similar to what they were last year. And hey, they were good enough to win the Super Bowl, but I know Chiefs fans, they were not very happy with how that regular season went. And it left them pretty worried about the postseason. So I do think that they could, make a lot of adjustments to this team in the draft. And they really have to find players that are going to pan at the position groups that they need.
Yeah, I do too. And I think that, to be honest with you, this is going to be something that's not a new take. Everybody's been saying it. When you have Patrick Mahomes and you have Andy Reid, every year you're going to be the favorite to win the Super Bowl. So, I understand some Chiefs fans might be frustrated, whatever, but to be honest with you, I don't know why we would doubt Brett Veach. Like, we've done this before. I did it too, especially when we traded Tyreek Hill. I'll never forget where I was when we traded Tyreek Hill. And, I just doubting it. And every time he's come through. So I think that I have no worries necessarily about how the roster constructing is going. I think that it's going to be similar to last year, but last year you got into the playoffs and you saw what happened. I think that's just what we need to be ready for. As long as you can try to win that division, that should be the regular season goal, and then get into the playoffs. And obviously, hopefully we have a 1 seed, but I don't know that I would bet on any AFC team beating us in the playoffs. None of them have when it matters except for Cincinnati. And we're not going to know what Cincinnati's going to look like next year. So like I said, as I know, some Chiefs fans might want some more depth in positions, and obviously that would be fantastic. I'm all for that. But I think right now they do have enough to run it back with the squad that they have going in pre-draft even, and this draft is just going to bolster that.
This draft is incredibly important. Like, the Chiefs had a draft a couple of years ago where they drafted McDuffie and they drafted Karlaftis. This was right after the Tyreek Hill trade, where it was so important to nail on that draft because that was going to set the Chiefs up for the next 5 to 10 years. And that is exactly, I think, the same position the Chiefs are in right now. They are one great draft class away from continuing this Super Bowl window another 5 to 7 years. And with Patrick Mahomes being in the prime of his career, winning Super Bowls with seemingly nothing at wide receiver, it's just going to be even more, I don't want to say easy, but even more likely that you continue winning Super Bowls if you continue to hit on these draft picks and get players that can replace the Trent McDuffies and the L'Jarius Sneeds. Because Trent McDuffie, he's an all-pro cornerback. They did not pay L'Jarius Sneed, and Trent McDuffie is going to command a lot once his contract comes up. So they're going to have to keep finding players to replenish the cycle so they can keep competing. And that's important, and I definitely think that's why draft season is so exciting, because we're looking at the future, good or bad. The player that gets drafted for this team in the first round is going to have a big expectation for the next 3 years. And that's why it's so exciting. But Joey, do you have anything else you want to add? Do you think the Chiefs are going to do anything surprising in the draft? Anything crazy that we haven't expected?
Honestly, no. I think Brett Veach normally keeps it pretty close to what we think is going to happen. It's just a matter of if things fall your way. When it comes to draft night, the thing that's tough about it is you have no control over your situation unless you have the first overall pick. After that, nothing is in your hands. You have to go off of what other teams do, whether other teams are willing to trade with you or not, and that all matters. So Brett Veach can't control that, but, like you said, Brett Veach has nailed almost every single draft that he's been in Kansas City. So I have no doubt that Brett Veach is going to be able to put a solid draft together this year and just build off of it. And hopefully we go wide receiver in the first round. That's what I would like to see.
Well, and listen, the Chiefs are back-to-back Super Bowl champions. The need for players to play day one is not like the Chicago Bears. You don't need to do that. They just need to find players that can be great supplementary players that can step in when needed and can start if needed. And I think with the Chiefs coaching staff and Andy Reid and all the defensive back coaches and wide receivers coaches, I do have faith that the Chiefs can find guys to fill those roles. And to answer the question, I think the Chiefs will draft a wide receiver in the first round. I don't think they're going to trade up, but I do have the Chiefs selecting a wide receiver at the end of the first round. So for Michael Darcy and Joey Segura, thank you for watching this Kansas City Chiefs live stream in NFL draft season presented by Bleacher Report.